Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia, my English podcast on the Georgian and regional politics. Let's start with the Megobari Act.
It's important for regional stability. Consolidation of democracy in Georgia is important for regional stability and US interests.
The big issue is the Trump defeats the deep state or the deep state defeats Trump.
Well, I have bad news for Georgian Dream because it turns out that deep state has 349 representatives in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
For Mr. Kobakhidze is nothing to be happy about.
After the minerals deal was signed, President Trump dealt President Zelensky with a royal flush.
Very clear link. What is good for Ukraine is good for Georgia.
Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia, my English podcast covering Georgian and regional politics. Talk Georgia is powered by Droeba Media Group, which produces high-quality news and analytical media content, and GSAC, a think tank offering in-depth political analysis of Georgia and the wider Black Sea region. GSAC also provides excellent academic and practical training for postgraduate and mid-career professionals. To discuss some of the key developments that shape politics in and around this country, we'll be joined by Mr. Valeri Chechelashvili, former Minister of Finance, former Deputy Foreign Minister, Guam Secretary General, Georgia's Ambassador to Russia, former obviously, and Georgia's Ambassador to Ukraine. So he graduated from the Taras Shevchenko Kiev State University, read international economics and international law at master's and doctor's level. Mr. Chechelashvili was senior fellow at Rondelli Foundation, and later he joined GSAC Executive Board, and now he's head of geopolitical studies of GSAC. Ambassador Chechelashvili, welcome to my show. Did I miss anything from your extensive biography? Or if you would like to add something, please go ahead.
Maybe my Istanbul part, because I was also serving as the Secretary General of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation from 2000 to 2004. But that's not important. Important is that this is a very, very good initiative, and I would like to congratulate you, George, for that, because I think for the international community it's very interesting how expert community assesses the role and place of Georgia in this turbulent world, in the network of regional and global international relations. I hope that our podcast, your podcast, will be interesting for diplomats, and not only diplomats, for the whole international community. And I'll be glad to contribute to this.
And thank you once again for your time. And let's start with the Megobari Act, the hottest topic in Georgia today.
Yeah, right.
The Megobari Act passed the US House of Representatives with overwhelming majority, 349 votes in favor, only 42 against. 168 Republicans voted, as well as 181 Democrats. Next up is the Senate, after which it will go to the President Trump to sign it into law. Bipartisan, obviously, this is a bipartisan bill, which is sponsored by Helsinki Commission leaders. It would require the US President, Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary to monitor situation in Georgia and to sanction members of Georgian Dream government and senior representatives who are engaged in significant acts of corruption, acts of violence and intimidation related to blocking countries' Euro-Atlantic integration, derailing Georgia from the democratic path, and also their immediate family members will also be subject to sanctions. The bill's name, Megobari, means friend in Georgian, but it stands for mobilizing and enhancing Georgia's options for building accountability, resilience, and independence. Right after the bill was passed, Representative Joe Wilson, co-chair of the Helsinki Commission, basically dropped a list of Georgian officials and public figures. He called them enablers of Bidzina Ivanishvili's state capture and accused them of steering Georgia closer to US adversaries like China, Iran, and Russia. And in his post, what he says is that support free and fair elections or face the consequences. Well, this list includes quite a big names: the Georgian Dream Prime Minister, now already the party leader, Irakli Kobakhidze, Rump Parliament Speaker, Papuashvili, Foreign Affairs Minister, de facto, Makabochorishvili, and some of the others, but not only from the government and parliament, some judges, media personalities, business figures, etc. Right. Again, obviously, I will read out few reactions from different sides, and then I'll move to you, Mr. Chechelashvili. Obviously, reactions were overwhelmingly positive from the opposition leaders and from Georgian public and civil society leaders, which cannot be said basically about Georgian Dream representatives. The few reactions. Levan Machavariani, Deputy Speaker of the GD Parliament, I'm quoting him: "We refer to this act as a hostile act because there is nothing friendly in it. Mr. Wilson is the author of all this, and you know what an odious figure he is. A lobbyist who was revealed to be selling tickets during the inauguration. There is every reason for us to believe that that person is a lobbyist for the UNM." But my favorite actually is the one from Mr. Zarkua. Right. What he says is that this is Wilson's insane initiative. You know who Joe Wilson is, right? He's a fraud, a congressman who sells flags and emblems to make money. This is just something cobbled together by Wilson and pushed by the whole army of Democrats hired by certain lobbyist groups, around 300 people. Some Republicans too, but who themselves voted or supported Trump's impeachment. So, no wonder that these people wouldn't spare us, he says. At the end of the interview, what he said was, and this is the most hilarious part, I would say, Trump does not need only any legislation to sanction our leaders or Georgia, and there's only now, and there is no way that he can sign this into law, but if he does, then it means that the deep state defeated him, and this is going to be the end of US democracy. Right. As one of my London friends would put it, funny innit? But it is indeed funny if it was not about Georgia's future, if it was not about our future, our children's future. So my question to you, Mr. Chechelashvili, is that what does the Megobari Act mean in practice? And what is the political weight and political implications on Georgia of this act?
Well, I think that it's a very important document, and it will have direct implications not only on Georgia but also for the region. And what is important is that it has a strong bipartisan support, which was demonstrated by figures you have provided to our listeners. It's a vivid manifestation of the fact that it's unanimity in Congress as well as in Senate, actually, because previously this law passed also the Foreign Relations Committee of Senate.
Absolutely.
So it's clear that it will have no problems whatsoever when going to Senate, and I'll come to that a little bit later, but I would like to say that it's a very well-structured document, which is addressing the problems Georgia is facing at the moment in a very systematic, well-structured manner. So what are the keynotes of this document? First, it's supporting the democracy and rule of law in Georgia, where the Act emphasized that consolidating democracy in Georgia is important not only for our country, but also for regional stability and US interests. The second key point, to my view, is that this act addressed the democratic backslide and emphasizes that democratic decline in Georgia creates a new environment. And in this new environment, it's necessary to additionally scrutinize acts of Georgian government and its maybe ties with Russia and other authoritarian regimes. The third keynote is that sanctions, which you have rightly mentioned, which says that those people who undermine democracy in Georgia, they have to be identified, and sanctions should be imposed on those people, including sanctions and travel bans. And following that, I think that this list of personalities, which was revealed by Senator Wilson, demonstrates that actually American congressmen and senators, they know very well, they're very well informed about what is going on in this country in reality. But these are negative parts of Act. There is also very positive part, which is saying the development of bilateral cooperation with Georgia and so on, which emphasize that if democratic development and progress is registered in Georgia, then U.S. government will offer us additional cooperation initiatives, mainly in 4 domains. The first is establishing more preferential trade regime between Georgia and the United States. Second is the enhancing of people-to-people contacts and further liberalization of visa regime. The third is proposing new economic and reconstruction package for Georgia. And last but not least, support in security and defense to counter the Russian aggression to Georgia.
And this probably will happen if Georgia changes the course and goes back to on the democratic trail.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, that if progress in democratic development of Georgia is registered, then these new opportunities will be on the table, presented. Now, about timing, I think that this is a demonstration of a clear fact that, of course, we know that we are not at the top priority foreign policy priorities of the United States, obviously, because at the moment United States are fighting with the different challenges all over the world. Ukraine, Middle East, now this possible conflict between India and Pakistan and a lot of others, trade tariffs and so on. But at the same time, it demonstrates that Georgia and South Caucasus is there on the map of foreign policy interests of the United States. And these sentence which I quoted from this Megobari Act, that it's important for regional stability. The consolidation of democracy in Georgia is important for regional stability and U.S. interests. I think that presents very interesting link between U.S. interests, regional stability, and consolidation of democracy in Georgia. Why? Because still congressmen are demonstrating that they see big potential in U.S.-Georgian relationship. Because for decades here in this region, the most reliable partner of the United States was Georgia.
And it's no by chance that Georgia was the strategic partner of the United States, the only country in the region.
Only country in the region was. Now they have signed strategic partnership also with Armenia.
Okay, well, yes.
They signed, and actually I've gone through very carefully through this new document, and actually it's almost 95% repetition of the document which was signed January 2009. Then State Secretary Condoleezza Rice and Minister of Foreign Affairs Grigol Vakhadze signed this document. So it's almost the repeat with some differences, because obviously we are, Georgia of 2009 and Armenia of 2025. These are different countries in different environments. After all, Armenia formally, but still is a member of CSTO. And Eurasian Union, which of course has its implications. But the fact that strategic partnership is signed with Armenia, I think, is very important, and it's good also not only for Armenia but for Georgia and for the region as a whole. Now, I would a couple of things I would like to say about timing of this. I think that so far American administration, both Biden's administration and Trump's administration, treated Georgian Dream Party and Georgian Dream government with a big patience. Well, I don't see any other example where American administration was treating some their partners or opponents, whatever, with such a patience, because all these speculative and conspiracy theories which are being developed by Georgian Dream, Global War Party, Deep State, Stable State, Global, now it's a new term, Global Deep State, and so on. Of course, it can't be treated seriously by serious politicians. By the way, it's very interesting that when this document was considered in the Foreign Relations Committee in both House of Representatives and Senate, Georgian diplomats were not present at these hearings, which is, very strange, because it's ABC of diplomacy. When legislation is going through parliament of country where you are accredited, I mean, it's it's mandatory to be present there and to explain your position, to present your arguments, to prove your points, and so on.
But
now,
who is supposed to be there? I mean, we don't have an ambassador to the USA.
Okay, but that time we had.
Okay,
sorry. That time we had an ambassador.
Oh, you mean when it started?
When it started. So when discussion is going on the plenary session of House of Representatives, ambassador can only attend and observe. But then when there are discussions in the Foreign Relations Committee, actually in the countries where I served, I had an opportunity in such an occasions to present and prove my point, to deliver additional arguments, how we see the situation, what is our vision, and so on. And it's normal work of any diplomat. So we were not present, which is an indication of the fact that either there were no arguments to be presented, or there was no position.
So what is your view on that?
So my view is that with these arguments of global war party and global deep state, and you are all here under the influence, I mean, other than that, it would be very difficult. Would it be even Talleyrand? No, it would be very difficult, to prove the point that there is no democratic decline in Georgia, for example. Okay, because as also these discussions in the House of Representatives demonstrated, American politicians are very well informed about what is going on in Georgia. Now about patience. I think that with this, it's a clear signal to Georgian Dream, and at the same time, there's still an opportunity for Georgian Dream to reconfigure their internal and foreign policy. Because they have maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks till this Megobari Act will go to Senate, and there is no doubt that it will be approved there, because first of all, we had almost unanimous support in the Foreign Relations Committee, and the second indication that it will go through very smoothly is the fact, maybe it's a different story, but it's the fact that Lindsey Graham had already collected 80 senators from 100 in support of sanctions, additional sanctions policy against Russia. It's not exactly the same, but I think that this group of senators are like-minded vis-a-vis this problem with Georgia. So now there is a challenge in front of Georgian Dream. Either using this opportunity till finally this Megobari Act will be approved in Senate and then signed by President, and it will be inevitably signed by President Trump. Why?
Okay, and my question is about this. What we hear from Georgian Dream representatives is that, okay, the big issue is the Trump defeats the deep state, or the deep state defeats Trump. And what they say is that the clear sign will be if the President Trump signs Megobari Act into law. If he does, it means that deep state defeated him. But, well, they hope that President Trump wouldn't sign it into law. So, I mean, well, I understand now they are in trouble because their propaganda line is seriously attacked, that they settled relations with the Trump administration, etc., which is, with Megobari Act, passing Megobari Act shows that it's not working that way. But what gives them reason to think that Trump is not going to sign it? Because I haven't seen a very, very long time that the President of the United States blocked the legislation which had bipartisan support. I even don't remember such case for the last 5 years or so. So
no, I don't remember either, because it would be a very dramatic step from any president, particularly when it's so clearly, I mean, seen this bipartisan support. Then, would President Trump not be ready to sign this? I think that he would very easily convince his Republican majority in both chambers,
absolutely,
just to wait and not to present it to the plenary session, okay? To have it like in a sort of Damocles sword.
Or shelve it, you know.
Or
there are a lot of legislation shelved there.
Yeah,
that's
shelved.
there, yeah.
Okay, but it means that something, the decision was made, for me at least it's clear that decision to promote Megobari Act in the House of Representatives was made in Trump administration. And he is waiting for that. But it's clear signal to Georgian Dream that now the time is to take it very seriously. Because if they will not restructure their internal and foreign policy with all the respective consequences, then it will go through Senate, then President Trump will sign it, and then it will be too late to do anything. Now, you are rightly asking that why then they are keeping the same language, saying that deep state. Well, I have bad news for Georgian Dream, because it turns out that deep state has 349 representatives in the House in the House of Representatives,
yes,
and more than 80 out of 100 in the Senate. I think that, but those people, those representatives of Georgian Dream who are speaking this common language of Georgian Dream, that deep state and so on, I think that their view are not predominant in the Georgian Dream, because we already see some signs. And some representatives are already saying that, well, it creates a lot of problems, we have to do something with that, and so on. And I think that it's an indication of very hard disputes which are going on internally in the Georgian Dream. Because so far, what was the message from the top of Georgian Dream? That, don't worry, everything is fine, we will cut deal, we are working with Trump administration, we are doing this, that. And as a sign of it, Georgian Dream was presenting the visit of first Prime Minister Levan Davitashvili as a very successful and almost breakthrough, which definitely was not the case. So what I'm trying to say, now Georgian Dream has 3-4 weeks to carefully think about its future policy, because if President Trump will sign Megobari Act, then it will be too late for them.
Okay, as we are talking about the implications of Megobari Act on the Georgian Dream people, and well, the big question is that whether they will cave or not. What does it mean to people who are standing on Rustaveli Avenue? Today, I think that 160 days passed of the consecutive protest. And actually one of the results of these protests could be considered the Megobari Act itself. Indeed, it is a hostile act towards Ivanishvili government or Ivanishvili regime, but it's a friendly act to people of Georgia. And what would be the practical implications of friendliness to the people who are protesting in the streets, to the people who care about Georgia's democratic future?
Georgia, there is also a very interesting sentence in Megobari Act saying that, emphasizing that U.S. government US side acknowledged the big progress on the democratic development achieved by the Georgian civil society.
Right.
So this is a direct message. And I think that you have rightly mentioned that it is all interrelated. So protests here and this strong will of Georgian people who are fighting for consolidating democracy in Georgia, it of course gives all incentives to our strategic partners in Europe and in the United States to support Georgian people and vice versa. The Megobari Act, the respective resolution of European Parliament, of Council of Europe, it also very clearly indicates that Georgian civil society is not alone, that this is well seen, and it has a strong influence on the policy makers of our strategic in the countries of our strategic partnership. So this is interrelated, and now I think that this adoption of Megobari Act in the House of Representatives will give more impetus and more courage and more strength to the civil movement here in Georgia, who is trying to consolidate the Georgian democracy.
Let's exhaust Georgian politics before we move to relatively global issues. Of course, they are also connected with Georgia, obviously, but today, GD Prime Minister Kobakhidze was elected as GD chairman. So, and it followed, obviously, resignation of Mr. Garibashvili as GD chairman, but if we take into this, if you look at this into the context of, okay, where the power center in the GD is, obviously minus Ivanishvili, because I mean nobody doubts that Ivanishvili himself is the center of the power. But what we see happening now is that Kobakhidze is consolidating his power. See, he is prime minister, the head of the executive branch, he is party leader, he controls rump parliament, okay, law enforcement agencies now basically maybe minus Gomelauri, for example, all is under his control. But also, again, let's take a look of the other prime ministers and leaders of the GD. So how, when these two positions ends up in one hand, how does it play out?
Well, I think that it was no surprise that Mr. Irakli Kobakhidze was elected as the chairman of the party. I think that it wouldn't be any surprise if, for example, some other political leader of Georgian Dream, like Mamukam Dinaradze, also I was expecting something like. But if we are coming to the figure of Irakli Kobakhidze, now he has a full responsibility, a much bigger responsibility than he had before he was elected, and I think that this creates for him some more dangers, because you recalled previous prime ministers, and many of them also combined these two very important positions. It was Giorgi Kvirikashvili, which was fired. It was then Mr. Irakli Garibashvili, which also was fired, and it was Giorgi Gakharia who left politics, I mean not politics, but Georgian Dream, and turned into one of the opposition leaders. So I think that maybe Mr. Irakli Kobakhidze is very glad now that he has concentrated more power and so on, but still I think that the main game maker in Georgian Dream is Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili. He's
honorary chairman.
Yes, he is honorary chairman. He is honorary chairman of Georgian Dream, and he has exclusive right, which is enshrined in the charter of the Georgian Dream, that he has exclusive right to present the candidate of the prime minister. So he's
not that honorary then.
yes, he is not that honorary. So I think that now he has much more responsibility, and he is taking these bigger responsibilities while entering in a more turbulent times for Georgian dream, because we all see that everybody knows that it's a very deep political crisis in Georgia. The society is fragmented. We are entering in the period when sanctions, very painful sanctions, may be imposed on Georgian dream leaders, and Mr. Irakli Kobakhidze himself is at the top of this list.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, by the way,
was
the
revealed
list
by-
that was yesterday, that was kind of put out by Joe Wilson, he's
by
number
Joe.
one, yeah.
He is number one, and it means that now he has to take action. And it's a very difficult choice for him. Whether he will go traditional Georgian dream way, and then he will face, very, very dramatic sanctions with all the respective consequences, or he will have to persuade his chief, Mr. Ivanishvili, that it's not possible to continue in the same manner, and something has to be done, which will be again a very difficult challenge for him. So, I think that for Irakli Kobakhidze, Mr. Irakli Kobakhidze is nothing to be happy about with these latest developments.
Okay, let's move to a more global politics. You've been ambassador to Ukraine, and I would give you plenty of room to comment the minerals deal, which is a very important development between US and Ukraine. What's in it in terms of economy for Ukraine? What's in it in terms of like business for the United States? And politically, is it a sign that finally there is an agreement between the US and Ukraine, and there is a finally bond between these two countries, that they are working on something together. They are in something 50-50. I need to quote Mr. Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury of the USA. He was on Fox News on the other day, and he was referring to that specific meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky in Oval Office, where President Trump said that, okay, President Zelensky didn't have the cards. But Mr. Bessent basically said that, well, now it's no longer the case, because after the minerals deal was signed, President Trump dealt President Zelensky with a royal flush, which in poker means that unbeatable card. And now he can take it to the Russian leadership and show that there is no daylight between the United States and Ukraine. They are on the same page. So again, what is your view on this minerals deal, and what does it mean to Ukraine, and what does it mean to Georgia, for example? Because the Georgia, no matter how isolated it is now because of the Georgian dream, cannot be possibly isolated from what is happening in Ukraine and in the wider Black Sea region.
Well, I think that this is a very important document. It's a sort of game changer, I think. And we are witnessing a new phase of strategic partnership between Ukraine and the United States, which is also indicated in this agreement, in objectives of this agreement. And I think that after this scandal, which we witnessed on 28th of February in the Oval Office of the White House, we were just all worried about how this future partnership between United States and Ukraine will develop. But now we have clear evidence that this phase of problems is over, and we're entering completely new phase of relationship between Ukraine and the United States, and it has very strong economic dimension as well as political dimension, because it says that this agreement is the further development of the strategic partnership between Ukraine and the United States, which will cope with the destruction, with the large destruction caused by Russian invasion in Ukraine, full-fledged invasion, and will focus on the support of the United States to create Ukraine as sovereign, free, and prosperous state in the long term. So, which means that now it's very clear message. It's very clear message to Russia, and as Treasury Secretary Mr. Bessent, after signing this agreement, he himself said, it is a very clear message to Russia that President Trump is committed to the peace process centered on the free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine in the long term. What is missing here is the 4 words: in internationally recognized borders. But I think that anyway, it's a step, and a very strong step in the right direction. It's a very clear message to Russia. And if you look reactions from Russian politicians and so-called experts and so on, they say that doesn't mean anything, that it's only a memorandum, how it will work, nobody knows. But both Ukraine and the United States demonstrated that they're very serious in that. It also very good for the United States, because it gives United States the privileged access to the new investment projects in Ukraine, having in mind also natural developing of natural resources, like not only rare earth metals, but also aluminium, graphite, oil, gas, and so on. But we are speaking about the new projects, which will be developed together in full partnership 50-50 by Ukraine and the United States. Plus, it's not the end of the story. Sides are continuing to work further on this agreement, and experts are working, and it will be, very detailed further document presented for signature for both sides, which will, in a very detailed, describe how both countries will interact in promoting common goals and objectives of this agreement. Plus, tomorrow, I think that Verkhovna Rada will consider it in the plenary session, which is again the interesting procedure, because it will demonstrate who truly is in favor of Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and development and prosperity in Verkhovna Rada. It will be a sort of, moment of truth for a lot of Ukrainian politicians, which will be very interesting to observe. But I think that overwhelming majority of Ukrainian parliamentarians will support this agreement. And Mr. President Trump himself is very supportive. He said that we will gain much more than $350 billion out of this agreement. It remains to be seen. But, as Ukraine really possesses a lot of natural resources, but Ukraine needs investments, and Ukraine is in war. Now, indeed. Now Ukraine is in war. United States committed the investing very aggressively in Ukraine, which means that it will be additional signal to the Russian Federation that, look, we are here are our political and economic interests, so be careful. So I think that it's a very good agreement, really game changer in this situation.
But any links with Georgia, or
any links with Georgia?
The regional
yes.
politics.
Very clear link. What is good for Ukraine is good for Georgia, and more stronger, more sovereign, more free Ukraine will be with more impressive political and military potential, it will be much better for Georgia because it would mean that Russia is weaker. But Russia is weaker not only because of that, but Russia is weak also and is weakening because of a very serious structural and sectoral problems Russia is facing at the moment. I think this is also the reason why Putin is trying to play with these, peace deals and so on, because he understands that he's exhausting his opportunities to continue this war in this manner, which he is doing at the moment. Well, it will take a lot of time to analyze the financial state of affairs in the Russian Federation, but believe me, Russian economists, George, which know much better than me and you what is going on in Russia, they are sending very alarming signals. And not only them, the governor of National Bank, Nabiullina, and the Minister of Finance of Siluanov, they are also very concerned about the situation. Nabiullina even compared the situation in Russia now with the situation in the Soviet Union in the anticipation of Soviet Union's collapse in the beginning of 90s. So I think that all this together, all these components brings us to the conclusion that it is also the weaker Russia will be. It's bad for Russia, but good for Georgia, for Armenia, for Azerbaijan, for the South Caucasus, and for U.S. interests in this region.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And coming back on the minerals deal, I also read out from there that obviously there's a 50-50 contribution that Ukraine basically is contributing their natural resources. US is considering investments, and plus military assistance could also count as an investment or as a contribution. That also makes it easier for the US administration basically to explain to their voters that, well, military assistance to Ukraine is not a charity, but business. So it's a contribution in a big fund, 50-50 thing that will reconstruct Ukraine. But the most importantly is that this deal is important for Mr. Trump, for national politics as well, to justify the further engagement in Ukraine, even if there is no peace deal.
And I will prove your point with Lindsey Graham and his activities, because in parallel, Senator Lindsey Graham managed to mobilize these 80 senators out of 100, number one. Number two, now when the United States are speaking about leaving the negotiation table and so on, there are two different things. If United States are leaving negotiations, cutting support, military support to Ukraine, or they are leaving the negotiations, accelerating military support to Ukraine. Now what we hear from the US administration is that they will continue military support, which was previously adopted, plus there are already two new deals on $50 million and $310 million. These are completely new. The second one is on the air fighters F-16, training and providing spare parts and so on, which is very important. Plus, there are talks now about new supplies of Patriot systems, and plus now nobody is speaking about lifting any sanctions from Russia. On opposite, sanctions will be there, and new sanctions are being elaborated again with in the Senate of the United States. So if we take this agreement not separately, but in the global whole context, in the global picture, we will see that this should be, very worrying signals to Moscow, which they have to take care about. Otherwise, capacity of Ukraine is expanding, and opportunities of Russia are shrinking, and this will be inevitably, will have its influence on the ground.
The last question, which I believe that the issue that we are going to touch now is very important, but it got under coverage in Georgian media somehow. I'm talking about Trump's tariff policy. So Trump introduced tariffs to almost every country, ranging from 100% down to 10% to Georgia, for example. There's lots of controversy about his tariff policy. A lot of people are saying that the American companies are losing trillions of dollars, and basically this decision tanked stock markets, for sure, and the high-tech companies lost surely trillions of dollars because they evaporated from the stock markets. But my question is this. Not necessarily in the global understanding what's going on, but does it have any implication on Georgia, financially, politically? Of course, I understand that Georgia does not deal with the United States a lot. We buy cars and some of the stuff from the United States, and we don't sell a lot of stuff to the United States. And, people maybe thought that 10% tariff is nothing. But you, as a former finance minister, nationally for Georgia, and in the wider region, Turkey, for example, the Caucasus, does it have direct and indirect implications?
No, I think that it has direct implications. I agree with you that it's very difficult to describe it as a sustainable foreign economic policy because we see ups and downs, introducing tariffs, removing tariffs, again introducing agreements, a line of the countries trying to start an agreement.
Sorry to interrupt you here. I forgot to say that when this tariff policy tanked the markets, then Trump kind of reconsidered it and paused it for the majority of the countries minus China.
Yeah, and plus, George, that foreign economic relations are very, they are very well regulated. And for example, the main international global organization is World Trade Organization, of which U.S. also is a member of, and as well as the overwhelming majority of 170 or 180 countries are members of World Trade Organization, and it has its own very clear procedures based on a basic principle of the most favored nation treatment, which means that your policy shouldn't be discrimination policy vis-a-vis the third parties. So it's a basic principle. Now, obviously, it's not this new tariffs policy is not entirely coinciding with these internationally accepted rules of behavior in the foreign economic relations. But if we come back to Georgia, it has implications because I think that first of all it was unfair very much, even this 10% to introduce to Georgia. Why? Because Georgia is in a list of very few countries which has serious negative trade deficit with the United States, because actually in numbers, U.S. is our number 3 trade partner after Turkey and Russian Federation. But main item, as you rightly mentioned, is import of second-hand vehicles from the United States. And we are importing more than 2 billion yearly. So the United States, they have huge trade deficit. And the main reason for this introducing new tariffs from Trump's administration was that U.S. has trade deficit and it should be balanced. So this doesn't work vis-a-vis Georgia. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, we have, I think, the most liberal foreign trade system, tariff system in the world, because we have 0, 5, 12% tariffs only. And these 12% tariffs are implied only for the limited number of commodities for a very limited time. So definitely it's not applied to the import items from the United States. And but this 10% it introduced. We don't export a lot of things, but last year, for example, we exported 90 million, it was the main export commodity to the US market, 90 million worth ferroalloys.
Okay.
And I think that introducing this 10% additional will, of course, decrease the competitiveness of our export of our ferroalloys to the US market. And by the way, this is one of our main foreign export commodity. Now, here I want to say a couple of words about Mr. Levan Davitashvili's visit to the United States. So this was exactly the case where he could make very positive influence on that problem, because he himself mentioned that he had separate meeting with the Office of Trade Representative. So I think that with these clear and very understandable arguments, he could work with his counterparts in the United States to lift this 10% tariffs from Georgian ferroalloys and in general our exports, which he did not. I mean, this is his scope of responsibility, because he is the Minister of Sustainable Economic Development, which includes also foreign economic relations. Now, it's very good to speak about that we have a global breakthrough, we met, it's someone, this and that, but here was the very concrete thing he could do for our exporters, which unfortunately he didn't pay the attention, or I don't know what were reasons, but nothing happened.
Yeah, sadly he was busy with something else, settling the relationship with the new
but settling, the level of his meetings.
But
really
I'll tell you what, when we have proper government, with the proper Minister for Economy and sustainable development, I'm sure will concentrate on proper national interest of Georgia.
Plus, Megobari Act will help us, because it envisages establishing more liberal and more incentive-based trade regime between. It's one of these four main avenues of cooperation with Georgia, which is enshrined in Megobari Act as our new opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chechelashvili, for being here, for your time. Thanks for watching us and listening to us. Thank you.